National Federation of the Blind. Live the life you want.
The National Federation of the Blind advances the lives of its members and all blind people in the United States. We know that blindness is not the characteristic that defines you or your future. Every day we raise the expectations of blind people because low expectations create obstacles between blind people and our dreams. Our collective power, determination, and diversity achieve the aspirations of all blind people.
Accessible technology. Anything's possible and everything's accessible. Accessible technology.
Welcome everyone to our Intro to Digital Accessibility and our 7-910 Equivalent Access Requirements for Students with Disabilities presentation. My name is Kennedy Zimnick. I'm a Access Technology Specialist at the National Federation of the Blind. I have here with me Carl Belanger, Stephen Polacek, and Brandon Rissett. Carl, do you want to go next? And then we'll do Stephen and then Brandon.
Sure. Hi, I'm Carl Belanger. I'm a non-visual accessibility analyst here at the NFB. Happy to have you all today.
Stephen.
Thanks, Kennedy. Hello, everyone. I'm Stephen Polacek, the Director of the IT Accessibility Initiative at the Maryland Department of Disabilities.
Great, thanks. And Brandon?
Good afternoon. I am Brandon Rissett. I am the Web and Content Accessibility Manager with the Maryland State Department of Education. This collaboration between Maryland State Department of Education, Maryland Department of Disabilities, and the National Federation of the Blind is a direct result of the need for additional support in implementing Statute 7-910, equivalent access requirements for students with disabilities. In 2022, the Maryland General Assembly passed Statute 7-910. Which aims to ensure that local education agencies and MSD develop or procure accessible digital tools aligned to the adopted accessibility standards. We determined that this was a great way to involve three of the major stakeholders in the initiative to ensure that we were providing relevant and meaningful information to the LEAs and serving as a resource to ensure that you know who you can reach out to if you have questions.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's a great point. We want to introduce ourselves and be resources to everybody, because ultimately we just want accessibility in the classroom. You know, we want students from all different backgrounds, all different abilities to be able to learn just the same as everybody else. So we're going to start with an intro to digital accessibility and what it is. Okay, what is accessibility? To be accessible means that websites, software, tools, and technology are designed and developed so that people with disabilities can use them. Accessibility encompasses all disabilities that affect access to course materials and software, including auditory, cognitive, neurological, physical, speech, and visual. So at the National Federation of the Blind, of course, we deal with a lot of vision loss and blindness, but there's a whole range of different disabilities that this law needs to cover, and it's not just vision. That's a big one, obviously, but there is a whole list that we'll get to in a few slides that goes over again with a little bit more detail. Again, the concept often focuses on people with disabilities or special needs and their right of access, enabling the use of assistive technology. For example, wheelchair access, braille menus, website accessibility. So we'll talk a little bit about assistive technology or access technology. We used the verbiage assistive technology in this presentation because that's the language that's common nomenclature, among the education system in Maryland. At the NFB, we usually say access technology. Both, they both mean the same thing. So if I accidentally call it access technology, I mean assistive technology. So again, wheelchair access, that's easy to grasp accessibility feature for buildings, for example. Braille menus, this gives blind or low vision individuals that read Braille the option to get that information in a different way. A lot of what we're going to be talking about today is providing accessible information in different and creative ways in order for them to be accessible. That's a lot of what accessibility is trying to decide how to convey information in a different way, in an accessible way. So I challenge you to start thinking about that. And website accessibility. This is probably the one that most applies to today's presentation. Website accessibility or software accessibility. You know, any of these learning management systems that are used every day. Any website that's used every day. I know there's so much digital and virtual schooling going on. And everything has to be accessible. So digitally accessible or digital accessibility. Assistive technology helps those with disability use services. So that's a pretty simple phrase. Okay, what is assistive technology? I have three types here: physical devices, software, and native features. And I'll explain what native features are here in a second. So physical devices, physical devices like Braille displays. Those are refreshable Braille displays that display Braille. I'll show you a picture of it here in a second. But that is a very important piece of tech to blind students, and making sure that this information and this education that we're giving them is accessible to things like Braille displays. Digital magnifiers, so digital video magnifiers. So it has a camera on it, and it's sometimes handheld, sometimes they're big, massive, we call them CCTV magnifiers that stay in one place. That digital magnifiers encompasses anything that has a camera that magnifies things. It could even be a smartphone, which comes into the native features here in a second. Braille note takers, a lot of the same qualities and characteristics as Braille displays, but some slight differences. I won't go into too much detail. They both display Braille and offer a way to present information in a different way. Optical character recognition, OCR devices. So this is where you take a picture of a piece of text and have that piece of text read back to you. And augmentative alternative communication devices, AAC devices. Then we also have software, things like screen readers, like NVDA or JAWS. These softwares do exactly what they sound like. They read what is on the screen to you. This is how blind people use computers. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Screen magnifiers. It does exactly what it sounds like. It magnifies what's on the screen to higher levels, to higher zoom percent. Speech to text, voice control. So this could be something like Siri or inputting text using your voice, in your iMessages. Tactile graphic creation. So tactile graphics are graphics that you can feel. I'm sure you might have heard of them. There's software that is special software that creates these tactile graphics. And then Braille translation kind of goes along with tactile graphics, kind of not. So this is where you take a normal Word document and then translate it into Braille and then emboss it. Native features. So these are features that come with a lot of devices, consumer electronics, phones, smartphones, devices like the Amazon Echo, Google Home, that have accessibility built in. So things like the ease of access menu, built-in screen readers. If you have a smartphone, you have a screen reader in your pocket, whether you know it or not. Built-in screen magnifiers. Again, everybody has a built-in screen magnifier in their pocket if you have a smartphone. Closed captions and audio output. So this is just a quick introduction to what assistive technology is. And I forgot to mention in the beginning, if you do have a question, you can go ahead and put it in chat or raise your hand. We'll get to it when we can. Okay, physical devices, assistive technology, physical devices. So again, Braille displays display elements spoken by a screen reader in Braille. And if you can see the screen, I have an image in the bottom middle of somebody using a Braille display. That display is called the Braille Note Touch. You can see the Braille being displayed, and you can also see somebody reading it with their fingers. Video magnifiers use cameras to magnify physical pieces of text. That photo is in the bottom right corner. So that is one of those CCTV magnifiers that just sits on a desk. It's big and heavy, so it's not very portable. But those have giant computer monitors, and whatever you put underneath magnifies it. So there's a camera underneath. These are devices that you'd likely see in a library, or a college purchases one. Again, they're not CCTVs, at least what I have pictured there, are bigger. There are handheld magnifiers, like I mentioned before. Braille note takers are smaller Braille displays that have standalone functions like word processors and calendars. Trackballs, mouse alternatives, and switches. So these get more into different disabilities outside of vision, but these give people the opportunity to input information in a different way. So instead of mouse and keyboard, you can use a switch or a button or a trackball as to a mouse alternative. So going outside of vision. Adaptive keyboard. So I have an example of an adaptive keyboard right there in the middle on top. You have the different colors for the different sections of the keyboard, and you also have large print. So those are called adaptive keyboards. Mainstream devices with accessibility features. So I already talked about kind of native accessibility features. So things like tablets and Chromebooks. I know Chromebooks are used a lot in education, and they are a lot of people have been using them over the past couple of years, and the accessibility has been improving with those Chromebooks. Okay, assistive technology software. So we talked a little bit about physical devices. This is some of the more popular software that's out there. So screen readers read elements on the screen, and it's controlled with only a keyboard. Have you ever heard of JAWS or NVDA before? These are screen readers. So there's something called Focus, and you'll hear a little bit in our demos what screen readers sound like. But as you either tab around or arrow around with your keyboard, it reads the different elements in a certain order on back to you. How well these screen readers work with technology is how well that software, that technology was designed. So a lot of the time, the accessibility work has to fall on the designer or whoever is creating the product in order to have that accessibility for the end user. It's not just automatically accessible. Screen magnification. So that's zoom text, which we have an image of the logo right there. That is screen magnification software. You can zoom, the screen and whatever's on the screen as high as you want. You also have some low vision features where you can change the contrast, change the colors, things like that. Optical character recognition, OCR, converting physical text to speech by taking a picture. So there's been standalone software that has done this in the past, and devices, of course, that do OCR. But these days, a lot more common is using your smartphone as an OCR device, using something like Seeing AI or Google Lookout. You can take a picture of a piece of text and have that text read back to you. And it's gotten a lot better in the past couple of years, a lot better just in the past year or two. So, and these are devices that people already own. So, it's just a win-win to, save some money and save a learning curve. I recommend checking out some of these OCR applications. Voice control. So exactly what it sounds like, being able to control something with just your voice. Something like Siri or Google Assistant, or there's other software out there, but those are the two big ones that everybody knows. Built-in smartphone software like VoiceOver, iOS, or TalkBack on Android. So these are the two screen readers that come with all smartphones. VoiceOver is iOS or the iPhone, and TalkBack is on Android. I recommend you go into the accessibility settings in your phone and mess around and turn on the screen reader. If you ever have an issue, you can always ask either Siri or Google Assistant to turn it on or off. So if you ever get stuck, but I recommend checking those out because a lot of the time people don't even know those exist, and it really gives a different perspective into how different people use the technology. Things with word prediction and graphic work organizers, kind of simpler things, but still important. Okay, Carl is going to talk a little bit about accessibility will address these disabilities.
Certainly. So accessibility is useful for a wide variety of disabilities, including vision, hearing, learning disabilities, motor disabilities, reading, cognitive, intellectual, and developmental and speech disabilities. All of these benefit from accessibility in software and websites. As far as how that accessibility works, accessibility these principles as first defined through the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are applicable to accessibility in general, and they form the acronym POUR: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Perceivable is students can read, hear, or otherwise understand the content and perceive it through whatever means they want. A sighted student may read the notes. Sighted students may read their notes. Blind students can hear them with a screen reader. Operable. Students can access or manipulate the controls and other features of whatever they're working with. Whether you're using a mouse or a keyboard to activate controls on a web page, things like that. Understandable. Content should be easy to comprehend for a variety of users. Acronyms or abbreviations should be defined. Layout should be consistent across content. Students can use tooltips or other pop-ups to help them identify content or meaning. Finally, robust. The software can be used on a variety of platforms and technologies, so say on Firefox or Chrome, iOS or Android, and allow access through a variety of different tools with screen readers, screen magnifiers, things like that. All right. When technology is accessible, users can navigate efficiently, read all buttons and labels of a piece of software, understand the content in the software. They can interact consistently with controls and other items. When the technology is inaccessible, on the other hand, users experience a number of issues, including the lack of ability to customize the layout to a manner that works best for them. These could be font sizes, color contrast, browser zoom, things like that. They could feel left behind other students because they're fighting with their technology while other students are trying to just cruising along and getting the work done. They could feel isolated if they have to use workarounds or wait for something to be made accessible. The class is, again, moving on while they're just sitting there waiting for something to happen or trying to fight with the technology. They could be excluded from group activities as well for the same reasons. They could be left with no way to navigate software, potentially having to rely on someone for homework or in-school activities, things like that. And specifically within the software itself, they can encounter things like unlabeled form fields, no graphic descriptions, no logical structure, so things are just appear cluttered to the students. Interfaces could be frustrating or confusing, and there could be no captions. Say if a person has a hearing disability and wants to be able to read what is going on audibly, they may not be able to. It may take students longer to complete simple tasks, and they may not be able to complete or interact with content. One example of this is drag and drop items in, say, a test. visually, a user just clicks on one of the items, drags it across the screen to where it should go, and then just releases the mouse to drop it. There is no drag and drop equivalent with the keyboard, and you need to make sure there are either use a different type of engagement for the student or have controls in place to make a drag and drop type of interface more accessible to a keyboard user. All right, now we're going to get into some accessible and inaccessible software demonstrations. First one up is going to be on some heading structure. Kennedy?
Sure. So when we're talking about headings, headings are very important to include for screen reader users, as it provides a way to navigate quickly through software. In the video linked below, headings are demonstrated in both inaccessible and accessible websites. Remember, these digital accessibility concepts apply to any software. When thinking about headings, just real quick before we get into the video, like your title 1 is a heading, is your heading number 1. Then if you have a subsection under that, usually starts with a heading, that would be heading level 2. So those are the headings I'm talking about. In this demonstration, I'm going to be showing why headings are important for screen reader users. Headings offer screen reader users the opportunity to navigate quickly throughout a web page or a document or a different software. All of those softwares should have headings included because it makes it a lot faster to navigate. So this demonstration is a purposely inaccessible site that doesn't have any headings coded in. And let me show you what the experience is like to a screen reader user.
List with inaccessible homepage. Link visited link out of link new link out of list demo starts here.
Okay, so now we're in the demo. Usually if you press H, it will jump you to the next heading.
No next heading.
On this page, I already see a good amount of headings that could be coded as headings. For example, welcome to City Lights. That would probably be the heading level 1. Then we have the 3 stories underneath it, heat wave linked to temperatures, etc. That could also probably be headings. And then we have elsewhere on the web that could also be a heading. Let me go ahead and show you the accessible version of the site, and you can see, how much better it is for navigation.
List with 6 items. List clickable. Show newslet template link out of list with 2 items. Link skip to navigation within demo page. Link skip to content visited. Out of list heading level 1. Well,
okay, so I clicked the skip to main content link and it brought me to the first heading.
Heatwave link to temperatures link heading level 2. Man gets 9 months in violin case link heading level 2. Lack of brains hinders research link heading level 2.
Again, headings are important because if you're just looking for a specific section of a website, you don't have to go through every element with just a down arrow with the screen reader. You can actually navigate using the H key, so you don't have to read every single piece of information on the page. Okay, this is an example. All right, just quickly before we go on to the next section, just a little bit more explanation. Again, like I mentioned at the end of the video there, headings are important for navigation. Navigation means how you can jump around to different sections that you want to in a piece of software, or in this case on a website. Like I said on the slide before, even if it's not on the internet or not on a website, a lot of the software that schools use isn't internet or isn't through a website. All of these same digital accessibility concepts apply. So in that software, you have to have headings, or in that LMS, you have to have headings in order for screen reader users to navigate to where they want to go. If you didn't have headings, then you'd have to read every single piece of text on the page, top left to bottom right, left to right, until you find what you want. As sighted users, if we're looking for something, we don't do that. We don't read everything. We don't scan every piece of text. We just look to where we want and we click there. We want to give that same power and that same ability to screen reader users. Okay, alt text or alternative text. So alternative text or alt text is a short description of an image that only a screen reader user gets access to. For example, the alt text for the image on the right could be view of Baltimore Aquarium from the water, evening time. In the video below, alt text is shown on an inaccessible and accessible website. Remember, these digital accessibility concepts apply to any software, not just websites. That one's pretty straightforward. So alt text, again, it gives a little bit of a description of what the photo or whatever graphic, it could be a graph, whatever graphic you have in the software in a quiz, in your syllabus, whatever. If it's important to the context and if it's important to the rest of the information on that page, then you would want to give that alt text, and it's just a short description. This demonstration, I'm going to be showing why having alt text or alternative text for images is important. You can see here that there are about 5 images, and the logo might also be an image. So these images have to have alt text or alternative text. Alt text is a short description of what the image is portraying. So there's an image of a violin. In a violin case, the alt text might be violin sitting in a green violin case. So let me show you, why alt text is important. Again, this is an inaccessible website demo.
Visited link, unlabeled graphic to get missing image descriptions. Open the context.
So we have unlabeled graphic there.
Combo traffic, today Thursday, blank.
And again, if I could navigate by heading with H, like we talked about in the video before, I would be able to navigate to Welcome to City Lights and then get to the pictures like I'd want to. But because there are no headings coded on the site, I have to use the down arrow key to get to where I want. And that goes through every element on the page, and it's just not feasible. If you're a screen reader user, you probably just wouldn't even use the site or the software or the system.
Blank. Link unlabeled graphic NAV home.
Another unlabeled graphic.
Blank. Link blank. Welcome to City Lights.
Okay, so this is where the first heading should be, but I had to use my arrow key.
City Lights is the new portal, the latest new link heat wave link to link man gets not link lack of brains hint image.
Okay, so this image is just labeled as image. This is what the screen reader reads. Obviously, if I were a blind or low vision user that couldn't see the screen, I would have no idea what this image is portraying.
Image.
See, some more unlabeled image. Let me go ahead and show you what an accessible alt text sounds like on the same page.
Or site by topic.
Okay, so another way to navigate using a screen reader is pressing G to move by graphic.
Free penguins playing on stage graphic. Anemone snowdrop flower blooming graphic. No next graphic. Free sunny spells graphic. City lights. Your access to the city. Sunny spells graphic.
Now we have some alt text in the images on the site.
Navigation menu, heading level 2. Welcome to City Lights heading level 1. City Lights is the new portal for visitors, the latest, heading level 2 link heat wave. After 3 years of effort, city scientists now agree that the primary cause of the 2003 heat wave was hot air from link full heading level 2 link man.
You might notice that these graphics don't have alt text. Sometimes that's okay. In this case, in this context, these are supplementary to they're extra to the news story, the heading, and the news story that's underneath it. You heard before the 2 images of the flower and the concert did have alt text because those are the main things that are being portrayed with those pictures. The pictures are the main idea. For these stories, the stories and the headings are the main idea. So they've been artifacted out, or they have empty alt text. Let me go back and let you hear what alt text sounds like.
Sunny, free penguins playing on stage graphic. Anemone snowdrop flower blooming graphic.
Okay, that was an example of alt text and why having alt text is important. Okay, just in the interest of time, I think that was pretty self-explanatory. The little bit at the end there about the context. Sometimes if the images are, like I said, just supplementary and they're not the main idea or the focus, sometimes they can have empty alt text. That means that there's no extra information that you need that you're trying to convey. It's pretty much just decorative or extra. It's not important to the main idea. So that's what that was about. Okay, forms and edit boxes. So forms, edit boxes, radio buttons, check marks are used throughout educational technology, whether that is a quiz, an alerting management system, LMS, or a name edit field in a PDF. Forms must be labeled properly for screen reader users to have equivalent access to content. In the video below, a form is shown on an inaccessible and accessible website. Remember, the digital accessibility concepts apply to any software. This is an example of an inaccessible form. We have some inaccessible radio buttons and some inaccessible text edit fields. There are plenty of applications of this, just off the top of my head, shopping, a lot of these educational, learning management systems, softwares have quizzes and things that you can fill in, that students fill in. So making sure, these radio buttons and drop-down boxes, edit fields are labeled properly. And let me go ahead and show you what an unlabeled and inaccessible form the experience is like for screen reader users.
Visited link graphic visit unlabeled graphic to blank blank to blank city lights survey. This week's survey: more city parks, a pain or a gain.
Okay, and a little background. A lot of the time when screen reader users are filling out these forms, you use the tab key. The tab key cycles through all interactive elements, links, or buttons on a page. So a lot of the time you're just going to be using tab instead of using your arrow keys to go down. Again, this is just like we talked about with headings and alt text. These are important because it gives screen reader users the efficiency to use the system just as quickly as a sighted or low vision user can.
Blank. Table. City lights survey. This week's survey: more city parks, a pain or a gain. Submit last week's survey results. What is your favorite and least favorite organ? Row 1 column 3, table. Row 1 column 1, table. Row 1 column 2, table. Row 3 column 1, table. Row 1 column 1, radio button not checked 1 of 1.
Okay, so this is, you can see and you can hear mostly how if a screen reader user had to wait all that time just to hear, and if you notice, we didn't even hear the end. We didn't even hear the actual label, which is this, in this case, it's none. So I'll show you the accessible version, but when you press tab, you should just hear the radio button label that you're trying to fill out. And also this shouldn't be a table.
Table. Table. Row 1 column 1, table. Row 1.
And I won't put you guys through that again.
Table. Row 1 column 1, table. Row 1 column 2, table. Angola, Luanda. Row 3, Antigua.
So that one didn't even read the question, which city do you find the greatest? I'm going to press tab again.
Table. Row 1 column 1, table. Row 1 column 2, table. Name, Mr. MRS. Email address, retype email. Row.
So for some reason, it is reading every single piece of text when I just want the radio button to be read.
Edit blank.
So I go to this email address field and I expect it to read, edit email address, but it just reads blank.
Column 3, edit blank. Name, Mr. MR.
So this would be a complete block for screen reader users.
Column, edit, submit button.
They do have the submit button labeled correctly. Okay, let me go ahead and show you the accessible version.
Favorite park grouping. None radio button not checked 1 of 1. Central Park radio button checked 1 of 1. Grand Park radio button checked 1 of 1.
So there you go. Now it's reading the labels properly. I'll go ahead and check that.
Space. City Lights Survey, submission failed accessible survey page. Clickable link skip to accessible.
There you go. So I just wanted to show you what it was like if you, this is the correct error message that you should get.
W3C Web City Lights Survey. This week, last week's survey results heading level. This week's survey, list with favorite park, greenest city grouping. You have not selected a greenest city combo box. Select a free newsletter, optional, grouping, MR. Name, edit has auto.
There you go.
Email address, edit has, retype email, edit has autocomplete.
Now those labels are labeled correctly.
City Lights Survey.
And that was an example of an inaccessible form versus an accessible form. Okay. Again, that one was pretty straightforward. These forms and edit boxes have to be labeled correctly in these check boxes in order for them to be able to be used. Okay, Crow's going to do a little intro about document creation, and then we have a Google Docs demo.
Certainly. So, most students these days are going to be using some sort of word processor, whether it's Microsoft Word, Pages, Google Docs, etc. They'll have tools to navigate and create documents with a screen reader or magnifier using whatever software. This demo is a brief demo, or this video is a brief demo of using Google Docs with a screen reader, which is one example of an accessible word processor. So this is a demo of Google Docs with a screen reader. Google Docs is a commonly used collaborative word processor and document editing tool in education, along with sheets and slides. Google Docs is an app that is very accessible with screen readers on Windows and Mac. Today I am doing the demo in Microsoft Edge with NVDA. So I have a blank document open, and as I start typing,
THIS space IS space DELO space OF space GOOGLE space DOS dot.
You can hear it announces the letters as I'm typing them, just like a regular word processor would. If I hit enter,
This is a demo of Google Docs.
up arrow reads it. I can make this a heading with, just as in Word, I can use Control-Alt-1.
Heading 1 style applied.
And it tells me that heading 1 style has been applied. If I used my down arrow and then up arrow,
Blank. Heading level 1. This is a demo of Google Docs.
it announces that.
Blank.
Similarly, I can do one
One
period
dot.
space,
Space. Created numbered list with 1 item.
and it says it created a numbered list.
LISTS. List 2. 2 point.
And it tells me that I'm on the second item after I press enter.
ARE 3. 3 point. USEFUL dot 4. Out of list. Removed list item 4.
And it tells me I pressed enter twice, so it tells me that I am out of the list and remove the list item. Now if I arrow up,
List 3. Useful. 2. R. 3. Useful. Out of list blank.
and it tells me that I was in the list, it reads the numbers and the items, and then it tells me that I have moved out of the list. This works similarly for bulleted lists. You can do tables as well. Also, as for Google Docs, it has various menus in the browser. So Alt, Shift, and a letter will bring you into the menus.
File sub menu 1 of 9.
Alt, Shift, F brings you into the file menu, and I can down arrow to go through this menu.
New and filled right pointer sub menu. Open O Control plus O. Make a copy C. Share as filled right pointing point. Email E filled right point. Download D filled right pointing pointer submit. Rename R. Move M. Add shortcut to drive. Move to trash T. Version history. Make available. Details B. Language L filled. Page setup G.
And as you can hear, there's a number of options. I can use my right arrow to move through the different menus.
Edit submenu 2 of 9.
There's the edit menu.
View submenu 3 of 9. Insert submenu 4 of 9. Format submenu 5 of 9. Tools submenu 6 of 9.
I'm going to go into the tools menu, but I'm going to use my up arrow.
Accessibility C.
There's an accessibility options. I'm going to press enter on this.
Accessibility settings dialog.
And it says I'm in the accessibility settings. If I press tab.
List. Turn on screen reader support checkbox checked, required for Braille support and collaborator announcements. Learn more about screen reader support.
So it tells me that whether to turn on screen reader support, and that is checked. For any blind student using Google Docs or any of the Google Suite, you will want to have this enabled.
Learn more about screen reader support. List. Turn on Braille support checkbox checked, works with third-party Braille hardware.
Braille support you generally want to have on regardless whether you're not using a Braille display or not, because it adds some features.
Turn on collaborator announcements checkbox not checked, no, when people enter and exit your files.
Collaborator announcements you may or may not want to have on depending on how much verbiage. Collaborator announcements are very useful in that as a screen reader user, if you're moving around a document, it will announce, John Smith is editing this paragraph, or, Jane Smith has entered the document, etc.
Turn on screen magnifier support checkbox not checked, works with third.
There's screen magnifier support as well.
Learn more about screen magnifier support link. Learn more link. Cancel button.
But we're done in here, so I'm just going to press space to cancel.
Space. Document. Blank. List 3. Out of list blank.
And we are back to our document. So this is just a very brief demo of how a screen reader user can edit text and change settings and generally interact with Google Docs, a very accessible online word processor.
In the interest of time, we do have a PDF demo. This is a longer one, so I'll kind of let it speak for itself. But PDFs, as everybody knows, are one of the most popular, if not the most popular, form of document on the internet, other than HTML and XHTML things that websites are made from. So PDF accessibility is very important. This is an example of an inaccessible PDF versus an accessible PDF. These PDFs include the digital accessibility concepts that we've been teaching about in this presentation, headings and alt text. How I made this PDF was I made a Word document and then I saved as an Adobe PDF. That is the best way to get the accessibility that you built in to your document to transfer over to the PDF, things like headings and alt text. So this first example here is an example of an inaccessible PDF. I have quote unquote headings here that aren't coded as headings. They're just bolded and increased font size. And I have some unlabeled graphics and a table that wasn't built properly. So I'm going to go ahead and go through with a screen reader. This is Adobe Acrobat. You can use the free version. This is how it is recommended for screen reader users to read PDFs.
Blank, a quick tour of Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay, so that's the first thing we hear, a quick tour of Baltimore, Maryland. It should be coded as a heading, though.
Heading level 3.
There is a blank heading, so when you save your Word document as an Adobe PDF, it attempts to put in tags when there aren't any tags. There weren't any headings coded into this, so there aren't any heading tags. Tags are what PDFs use to communicate the information to a screen reader. So there are heading tags, regular text tags, graphic tags, form tags, many different types of tags. Today, we're mostly talking about headings and alt text tags. So because there are no headings coded into this document, then I can't navigate by these headings like I think I should. So the first title of this document is A Quick Tour of Baltimore, Maryland, and that is not coded as a heading, so I can't navigate using my H key.
No previous heading, no next heading, no previous heading, no next heading.
So you can hear that there's no previous heading and there's no next heading. So the screen reader user is forced to use the arrow keys to go through every element on a page instead of having the ease of use and the ability to navigate around a document.
And our international Braille and
So I'm just going to use the up arrow and down arrow key to show you guys how this inaccessible PDF reads.
Be sure, blank, blank, the national, blank, where to visit, blank.
So you hear blanks. Blanks should be taken out. Blanks are from white space. And that's something that the the PDF creator has to go in the tags and delete that blank space.
National Federation of the Blind, Baltimore. Introduction. Baltimore MD has a wide range. National blank, where to visit.
You see introduction there. That should be a heading level 2 because it's a subheading of heading level 1. And then where to visit should also be a heading. But again, they weren't coded properly, and that just means they weren't in the styles guide in the styles pane in Word, excuse me. You can choose a heading level, and that's what I'm talking about here.
Blank, the National Federation of the Blind headquarters.
This should be another heading, but it's just regular text. Even though it looks bold and bigger, it doesn't make it a heading.
Blank, blank, blank.
And then here is a graphic, and this graphic should have alt text.
Page 3. No next graphic. Restaurant.
And it's not picking up any of these graphics. It thinks that this inaccessible table that I put in here is a graphic. So because I didn't add any alt text to these images, the PDF tagger didn't see it as an image.
Blank, 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 Phillips Seafood. Blank.
That wasn't alt text, that was just the subheading.
Blank.
And let me show you this inaccessible table at the bottom.
Be sure to eat blank. No next table.
First off, you can navigate by table using T, and it doesn't see that there's a table here.
No next table, blank, page 3 blank. Graphic restaurant item price Phillips Seafood Crab Cake S $15 Thames Street Oyster House Lobster Roll $20 Zen. Graphic West.
So because I created this table just inserting an Excel table, just because it looks like a table doesn't make it act like a table to a screen reader. So it needs to be created using the table creation tool in Word, and then the header rows must be repeated. That's an option in the table layout. Let me go ahead and show you what an accessible PDF looks like and acts like. Okay, this is an example of an accessible PDF. Right off the bat, visually, you can see that I use the heading styles for these headings. That's how you create headings in Word. Again, I created this PDF by creating an accessible Word document and then saving as a PDF. So let's see how I can now navigate by heading.
Introduction heading level 2. Where to visit heading level 2. The National Federation of the Blind headquarters heading level 3.
So if I was looking for a certain part of the document, if I was looking for the National Federation of the Blind headquarters heading, I don't have to use the arrow keys to go down each element to find that heading. I can just press H.
Blank.
And again, I mentioned before, there will be blank spaces automatically. That's just something that needs to be cleaned up. It's not necessarily a blocking issue. It just makes it a little bit less easy to use because you have to listen to the blank before you get to the next element.
Graphic National Federation of the Blind from the outside on a sunny day.
Okay, so that's what alt text sounds like. It said graphic, and then it read the alt text, which is National Federation of the Blind headquarters on a sunny day. If I wanted to navigate to the next graphic, I could press G.
Page 2 Baltimore Aquarium at night, from the water, with lights visible from the windows on top graphic. The Baltimore Aquarium is one of the best aquariums in the world.
And then I press the down arrow to get to the regular text. So I press G to get to hear that graphic information, which is the alt text. And then I press down again to get to the subtitle to this graphic. I'm going to press H to get to the next heading.
Where to eat heading level 2. Phillips Seafood heading level 3. Blank. Graphic drone shot of Phillips Seafood on the Baltimore Inner Harbor.
And there's some more alt text. Now I also have a table in here.
Table with 4 rows and 3 columns. Row 1 column 1 page 3 restaurant.
So it tells me how many columns and rows there are. And as I scroll through, it repeats the header information. Now think if you didn't have this header information repeated, you would lose your place. This is a simple table, but most tables aren't this simple. So you need the header information to be repeated.
Column 2 item, column 3 price, row 2 restaurant, column 1 Phillips Seafood.
So you heard it say row 2, column 1, restaurant, Phillips Seafood.
Item column 2 crab cake sandwich, price column 3 $15.
And this was an example of an accessible PDF. A lot of, like I said before, many of the digital accessibility requirements for websites and software are also applied to documents like this, like PDF documents.
Hello, everyone. So now we're going to look directly at 7910 and try and summarize what it is requiring of State of Maryland to accomplish. So we're looking to put all of its definitions and its requests into kind of more plain language to help you guys understand. Next slide, please. So 7910, equivalent access requirements for students with disabilities. 7910 requires a local education agency, also known as an LEA, to provide equivalent access to digital tools for students with disabilities, including the development, purchase, and provision of certain digital tools. It ensures that certain specifications are used in grants and procurement contracts, requires procurement contracts to indemnify the LEA for certain liabilities and costs, and requires a vendor who provides an LEA with a digital tool that fails to meet specific measured standards to modify the digital tool at the vendor's expense. So, boiling this down, all digital tools, and we'll define that shortly, used in the classroom have to be usable and accessible for students with disabilities. We'll go through each of these sections or each of these line items in the next few slides, but throughout the whole procurement process, 7910 is asking for LEAs to make sure that the tools they're purchasing are accessible according to the standards lined within, and also protects the state from having to try to modify or make accommodations for products that they don't own. So the vendor, if there's an issue, is responsible for making sure that their product is accessible. Next slide, please. Thank you. So digital tool refers to online platforms, online courses, information and communication technology, ICT services that are directly connected to student instruction, digital content, and digital technologies not requiring sight in an equally effective and integrated manner. So anything that a student may be using in the class that is online, that can go from anywhere from Word documents or PDF documents to Zoom itself or another hosting meeting platform that using for remote learning, to the learning management system itself that they are taking their quizzes on or submitting their homework to. Equivalent access means the ability to receive, use, and manipulate information and operate controls necessary to access and use information technology, including by non-visual means, so that a student with disabilities can access the same services as a student without disabilities with substantially equivalent ease of use. Equivalent access includes keyboard controls used for input and synthesized speech, braille, and other audible or tactile means used for output. For example, a quiz on Blackboard must be accessible to screen reader users just like it is for sighted users. Easiest way to think of this is you have one end, the quiz, but you have multiple means to use it. So one student who is just using their mouse and is reading through it visually on screen, they're clicking, radio buttons to answer, choice A, B, C, or D to a question. Whereas another student who is blind or is low vision is using a screen reader and they have to use the keyboard. So they're pressing tab to move to the next question. They're using the arrow keys to select which of the answers, and then they're pressing enter or space to select the answer they want. To then a student who might have a physical disability, who is also using the keyboard, but they don't need the screen to be read to them, but they still need to use those same key commands in order to access the questions and answer. So same quiz, everyone has the same material, but they're using it in a different way. So non-visual access means the ability to receive, use, and manipulate information, operate controls necessary to access information and communications technology through keyboard controls, synthesized speech, braille, or other methods not requiring sight. Excuse me. Now let's look a little bit at the procurement process, since we've looked at kind of what people need to do and at least understand what we're looking for when products are proposed. So the Notice of Equivalent Access Requirements, the Accessibility Conformance Reports and Evaluation section. In 7910, excuse me again, C1, invitations for bids, requests for proposals, procurement contracts, grants, or modifications to contracts or grants issued by the state or any local school system shall include notice of the equivalent access requirement whenever funds awarded may be used to develop or obtain digital tools. So what does this mean? It means that the access requirements we've been talking about, the standards that are listed in the law itself, and Brandon will talk to more about shortly, have to be made clear to the vendors of the digital tools from the beginning of the procurement process. So the request for information, any solicitations that are sent out, any grants that are put out for bids or proposals have to contain that equivalent access requirement. They need to let vendors know, we are expecting you to tell us that your tool is accessible, prove that it's accessible, and maintain that it's accessible. Next slide, please. 2.1, beginning September 1st, 2023, so this part is in effect already, an invitation for bids or request for proposals for a digital tool issued by the state board or local school system shall require a vendor to submit an accessibility conformance report that includes a voluntary product accessibility template. 2, the accessibility conformance report required in subparagraph 1 of this paragraph shall explain how information and communication technology products, including software, electronic content, and support documentation, conform to the most recent Section 508 standards for information technology accessibility under the Federal Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So the vendor has to prove that their product is accessible, that it meets the standards we're asking of them. To do that, they have to submit documentation that is explaining what standards they meet and how they do so, or if they don't, why. That's called an accessibility conformance report. The voluntary product accessibility template is a type of accessibility conformance report, and that will be covered in the next module next week. So if you want to know more about that, please make sure to attend that next Thursday. As for the, can you go back, please? Sorry. As for the second part, the report itself contains those standards if they use the correct one. If they don't, if they're using something else, you need to make sure that they understand that we are expecting the Section 508 standards as per 7910's publishing. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, 3.1. A local school system shall establish a process to evaluate a digital tool being considered for development or purchase for conformity with the requirements of this section. 2. The evaluation process established under subparagraph 1 of this paragraph shall include evaluation of the digital tool for equivalent access and non-visual access by an employee or a contractor of the local school system who, 1, specializes in accessibility and WCAG accessibility guidelines, or 2, is a blindness specialist who is knowledgeable in accessibility. So in addition to the vendors having to prove that their tool is accessible and showing that report, the local school systems need to look at the report and decide, yes, okay, this meets our standards or is acceptable, and also potentially test the product itself. And that process it will need to be done by someone who is been trained in accessibility. Usually that involves working with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, but because Maryland is has specifically mentioned non-visual access, a blindness specialist, preferably someone who is actually low vision or blind, is knowledgeable in accessibility, can also fill this role. And then number 4, a procurement contract for a digital tool shall require a vendor to indemnify the state board or local school system for liability and costs arising from the failure of the digital tool to meet the requirements of this section. So if the vendor, for whatever reason, submits a proposal and is accepted, the contract has to make sure that the state and school system are protected in the event that the vendor, the product is not actually accessible and a student or a family member or a teacher or someone else is having an issue with it. Usually this process involves the vendor having to remediate the product, and that's why they need to make sure that they understand that should an issue arise, the school system is going to go to them and ask them to fix it. And oops, sorry. With that, I believe, Brandon, it is your turn now.
Sounds good. So, just to reintroduce myself, because there are a lot more people that jumped on after we did introductions. I'm Brennan Risette. I am the Web and Content Accessibility Manager for the State Department of Education. So this is one of the things that we are currently developing. So when we look at 7-910, there are requirements that each LEA, including the State Board of Ed, have to include equivalent access standards. Well, these equivalent access standards are currently defined under COMAR 13A 0605. And adopted under COMAR is that each LEA is to procure accessible digital content measured under the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 level AA. So when we look at this evaluation, the school systems are really looking at how well does that digital tool align to those standards. Go to the next slide, please. So currently, LEAs are prioritizing the selection of digital tools that best meet the specifications, have pedagogical value, and the greatest functionality aligned to the equivalent access standards. So this is kind of that prioritization. LEAs should be collecting data. We should be evaluating products and determining which products work best for our students in our settings, and then evaluating the accessibility as well. Now, beginning October 1st, 2024, that LEAs have to actually select the product that best meets the specifications. No longer is it a prioritization. They have to select from the available products that best meets the equivalent access standards. So it's no longer about, hey, this is the one that works for pedagogy. This is the one that works within our systems. Now we're switching starting October 1, 2024 to looking at direct alignment to those accessibility standards. What that is going to look like is explained on the next slide. So what will happen? The statute uses the local school system. I keep calling it an LEA, but that LEA will evaluate the digital tool, determine if the product meets the standards. If there is no product, or one would fundamentally alter the nature of instruction or would result in an undue burden, the LEA will actually notify my office at MSDE. We are currently developing that procedure, but if I look at what 2I is stating, the LEA should be looking at how it would fundamentally alter instruction, what is the undue burden, and what products are and are not available when evaluated to the standards established. Once I receive that notice, the department or MSDE will consult with Department of Information Technology, DO-IT, and Maryland Department of Disabilities to determine how to proceed. When we look at that next steps, These are the undefined aspects of the law. It's going to tell you you do X and Y, but we don't know what that truly will look like in practice. So if we can go ahead to the next slide, please. So myself, MDOD, do it. We're going to collaborate. We're going to talk about next steps. We're going to look at the submission from the LEA. We're going to determine if there is a product or is not a product that best meets the equivalent access standards. If there is a product that best meets the equivalent access standards, the law requires the local school system to obtain that product. If MSDE, MDOD, and DOIT determine that there is no available product that meets those equivalent access standards, the LEA with MSDE's approval may obtain that product that does not meet the equivalent access standards. These two pieces, we have not developed the practical implementation of how that will look if MSDE says you must obtain this digital tool or you may obtain this digital tool. So this is still actively under development, and MSDE should be releasing guidance in the first half of 2024 to provide guidance directly to our LEAs how to move forward on the next steps. Next slide, please. So this is actually out of place, I think, maybe. I don't know, but I can talk about it. For some reason, I thought we already discussed this. So when we look at the law, and I apologize because I know I've reviewed this, but it didn't seem like it there. When we look at the law mentions a couple of pieces that LEAs need to be aware of when evaluating digital tools. It mentions Section 508 of the Federal Rehabilitation Act, or any other widely accepted and freely available technical standard. There is no other widely available and widely accepted and freely available technical standard outside of the Web and Content Accessibility Guidelines, the WCAG, which are actually adopted in COMAR. So the law will actually, in the next section in the law, reference MSD's annual update to COMAR to ensure that we are current with the accessibility standards. The goal, even with this specification, is that developed or purchased digital tools have to meet these standards. And there's a hand up. Go ahead.
Hi. Can you explain the following text from 7-910 section H2 that says an online platform, online content, website, web service, web page, educational resource product, or online curriculum developed or purchased by a county board that is made available to enrolled students of the local school system or online to the public shall comply with the most recent version of the World Wide Web's Consortium Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So, does this mean that districts should require vendors to meet the most recent version of WCAG, even though equivalent access is defined in COMAR 13A.06.05 as WCAG 2.1 AA?
That is a great question. And let me clarify what was just asked. So the next section, so we're in section F. So we actually backtracked. So it's going to be 2 sections later where it's actually under all. Actually, it's not. I don't believe it's in our presentation, Kennedy. It's under the alternate methods of instruction and online platforms section of the law, where it talks about just because we offer a digital tool to students with a disability or without a disability, and that student can access it, we can no longer give that student with a disability that paper and pencil alternative. we have to look for an equivalent digital tool to provide them that enriched learning opportunity. And then it further clarifies, and this is some of the challenge with this law, it further clarifies what was just shared, where it says that the local school system or let me read from a logical section. Sorry. Shall comply with, I picked the wrong word to start with, so I apologize. Shall comply with the most recent version of the World Wide Web Consortium's Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Well, WCAG 2.2 was published in September, October,
Yeah.
somewhere around there, right? So the interpretation that I have received from my legal counsel, and I would encourage LEAs to consult with their legal counsel, is that where it says under the duties of the department, that the department shall annually update the requirements for accessibility of digital tools under COMAR 13A0605. That is the part that I would reference when saying that we must comply with what is adopted under COMAR 13A0605. Now, if I'm engaging a vendor in a discussion, I would gladly engage that vendor in a discussion around the fact that the standards are now actually WCAG 2.2. WCAG 3 is on the horizon. How are you going to adopt to meet these standards? This is where the law is not clear, because in section F, it says, hey, subsection A2, section 508 of the Federal Realization Act of 1973, not 1793, or any other widely accepted, freely available technical standards. Well, technically, the EU has widely accepted, freely available technical standards, so they would fall under that, but they're specific to the European Union. So what I always point people to is that we need to look at specifically COMAR 13A0605, because that is what is codified in law from MSDE. And I know there's some discussion out there, but that's where I would put. Martha asked, what version of the VPAT should we be using? This is a great question. Truthfully, the state of Maryland just, I think, says now 2.5 in their RFP. When we look at what we're aligned to for this legislation or this statute, the version is not spelled out. But the only way that we can have a vendor evaluate to a specific version that aligns to WCAG 2.1 level AA, I would look at VPAT 2.4 revised or VPAT 2.5 and allow them to omit the sections that are not relevant. And we will discuss that much more in depth during our next session.
So one more follow-up.
Sure.
So does this mean that MSDE is going to update COMAR 13.8.06.05 to WCAG 2.
So yes and no. So the way it has been interpreted by MSDE, that we can annually update the requirements for accessibility of digital tools under COMAR 13.8.0605. It does not mean we have to update to the newest standard.
Okay.
As far as I know, no one in my sphere of discussion here has discussed moving to 2.2.
Okay.
Brendan, just to add to that.
Please.
Yeah, so I am part of a collaborative group with other state accessibility specialists, and yeah, the general consensus is we're still all trying to get people to adhere to 2.1 standards. So moving up to 2.2 standards is just not truly feasible. So and with them having only been published a few months ago, the general consensus is let's hit 2.1 first.
And I would also add, the challenge at this point is many of our vendors are behind in adherence to even 2.1, because the federal standards are much lower than what MSDE requires. And truthfully, this statute is very unique, and I stand on the ground that it's one off of codified K through 12 accessibility standards. I've talked with a lot of other professionals. There's nothing else like it out there. So we're already pushing the envelope, so would be hesitant to push it much further currently. Now, I will say I've engaged vendors around WCAG 2.2 around a couple of the standards. There's a standard on multi-factor authentication that's incredibly important. There's a couple others that are beneficial when you're designing large infrastructure projects. We can go to the next slide. And if you have questions, please interrupt me. So actually, we do have some of it here. We actually do have part of the section that is being referenced. So when we look at this, the key is to ensure that local school systems are providing equitable access and that students can independently use these tools. So when we are providing access to digital tools, the goal is to really allow our students with disabilities to have a equivalent enriched academic experience. We want to get away from those traditional alternatives that were not as enriching as the use of digital tools. We can go ahead to the next slide as well. Okay, this is what I would refer to as the teeth within the law. If a local school system were to procure a digital tool and that vendor changes something within that digital tool, and the local school system now is aware that the vendor fails to meet the equivalent access standards, within the first 18 months, the local school system has to send written notice to the vendor about failure to adhere to those standards outlined in the procurement. When the vendor receives that, the vendor is then required to modify at their expense that digital tool. Go ahead to the next slide. And if the vendor fails to modify that digital tool in the agreed upon timeline, there are actually, the LEA is actually allowed to levy civil penalties for failure to comply. First offense is $5,000. Second offense and each subsequent offense is $10,000. This aspect is modeled directly after the Maryland non-visual access clause and the state's ability to go after vendors for failure to comply. So this is what kind of will encourage vendors to hopefully maintain compliance to the accessibility standards.
And
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and launch our last poll, just in case anybody has to leave early. Please answer these couple questions, and we give you some spots to type in some feedback as well. Thanks.
Go ahead to the next slide. Oh, yep. This is actually what we were mentioning earlier, H1, where we talked about students with disabilities have to achieve the same instructional outcomes consistent with the IEP or 504, and that alternate method of instruction must include digital tools if available. The challenge is if available. There may be some programs out there that there is not an accessible digital tool that a student could use. However, we need to make sure we're doing our due diligence to make sure the digital tools we're selecting allow students with disabilities to have that same instructional experience. Go ahead. Thank you. Actually, here we go. It mentions the worldwide. This is the section that was it Jennifer was mentioning it, I believe, where it talks about the most recent version of the World Wide Web Consortium. So we have already discussed this slide at length. So
okay. Yeah.
Go ahead, Kennedy.
Sure. So this was just an introduction to 7-910. We want to go a little bit more in depth with what VPATs are and what accessibility conformance reports are. Sorry, voluntary product accessibility templates. That's what VPATs are. So this requirement ensures that all software purchased for use in the classroom is accessible to all students. Hopefully that's been driven home at this point. This is accomplished partly by using documents called a VPAT, a voluntary product accessibility template, and accessibility conformance reports covered in the next module. This will be covered in detail, including how to interpret a VPAT and ACR in Module 2.
National Federation of the Blind. Live the life you want.